and the head is central. It doesn't mean we're properly aligned. Your brain has just found a way to try to be as efficient as it can be. Kind of like the navigation system on your phone. To go from here to Miami, there's one efficient route right now it takes. But if traffic starts to accumulate here, or the road closure here, it's going to reroute you to the next best way to get to Miami. That's how our brain works with movement. So as you're standing there, put your attention in your right foot. Do you feel as if there is more pressure underneath the rear portion toward the heel? Or do you feel like there's more toward the ball of the foot? Do you feel like it's rolling to the outside? Or is it kind of moving medially to the inside? Once you get an understanding of that, that's cool. Do the same thing with the left foot. Do you feel as if there is more pressure in the rear foot or in the forefoot? Better yet, is it in the identical same place as it was on the right side, or is it different? If it's different, that's cool information for you. Because that's telling you that that right foot is behaving differently than the left foot. Which means that I can't unscrew my foot. It's connected to my ankle. So wherever my right foot is, it's affecting and creating a position for my right ankle to live in, which is going to dictate where my knee is, my hip, my pelvic position, my spine, all the way through my body. Cool with that? Pretty amazing when you think of it. And then the left foot, it's got its own work to do too, and it's probably different. Kind of like the Beauty and the Beast, right? With your hands. One has beautiful calligraphy, you can write your name with your eyes closed. And the other one opens the jam jar, right? Rarely do you ever try and switch. There's always these two roles. Soccer players will tell you, football players will tell you, however you want to say it, that when you're on the pitch, I've got one stance or plant leg, and I've got one that's my power, my kick, right? There's so many patterns throughout our world, we don't even recognize them because they're so normalized in our life. To the point where how many people are recognizing that they have two different feet right now and they didn't ever think about it? How cool is that? Okay. So, 3 points of contact. Let's just for the heck of it, I haven't done this before, but it's kind of cool to play around with. The green wedges that are near you, if you have green wedges, if you've got two and you want to share one with somebody that doesn't have one beside you, you go right ahead. But I think people up front, and looks like we've got a couple extra sets here up front. So if you're missing one, please go ahead and grab it. You should have one black wedge that's wider and two green wedges that are narrow. Usually the black wedge we keep to the forefoot, and the green wedge, at least one of them, we put around the heel. Now remembering that the fingers here are moving in each direction, arches dropping and then lifting, well that's kind of sagittal plane. But what we'll also find is that the front before the heel and the talus bone that sits above, the cowboy there, we've got the tarsal bones and the metatarsals. And they move opposite to the rear foot in all three planes of motion. So when we pronate and drop down on planet Earth and the arches drop, we're not just dropping and moving in opposition to the sagittal plane. We're doing the same thing in the frontal plane and in the transverse plane. Some of us really work well in one plane, but not so well in another, or maybe in two, but we don't work well in one. So these wedges can encourage oppositional motion. And when that happens, joints open, tissue lengthens, proprioceptors fire. Your foot not only comes alive, but then your ankle gives some information all the way up through the body. Your knee starts behaving differently. Your hip starts behaving differently. Oh my gosh, I'm feeling my glutes. Wow, and I didn't even take a miniband around the ankles. No offense to the miniband world, they're fantastic tools, but they're not going to solve the world's problems. Okay, if you were to think about the pressure underneath both feet, and those tripods, the balls of the feet underneath the ball of the big toe, the ball of the feet just before the little toe, and your heels, is there a place where you don't have pressure? Go ahead and take one of those wedges and just gently, you don't have to do it, you don't have to jam it and shove the whole thing under there, just a little bit underneath that one place. So what we're going to do is just fill up the space for a moment. And just check in with how you feel your body weight and the pressure under your feet after doing that. There's 3 places that you could choose from, or more than one of those 3 places. Does that change how things feel? I'm just curious. I don't really know, and I'm not expecting you to say, wow, that's the most amazing thing. This is the best thing I've ever gotten out of a Perform Better Summit. The guy told me to shove a little thing under my foot and all my problems just were healed. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, let's just see if there's any change. Like, do you feel any shift in how you manage your mess? Do you feel more stable or more grounded? Don't really know. Now, this presentation was all about unlocking mobility, so I don't want to forget about that. We're going to definitely do that, but I also want to show you how you can utilize these in the gym setting, because I use them all the way through the rehab to return to performance spectrum. They're tools that are all the way through. I don't just simply put them aside once the rehab protocols have been set. I actually will probably come back to them when I see movements that aren't moving, the joints aren't moving the way that I'm hoping them to, so I can affect it. So let's do this. The wedges, you can step off them for right now. Let's go to your pelvis for a moment. All right? I want you to check in. If you were in a bank teller's tube, I don't want you to hit the wall. Okay? So you're going to try and stay stacked. But what is it like to anteriorly and posteriorly tilt your pelvis? And use descriptive words, adjectives, not anatomical terms. Is it crunchy, creamy? Is it skippy, peanut butter? Is it alien, foreign? Is it ratchety? Is it smooth? Do I have to think about going in one direction or the other one? It just comes naturally. Is there a difference between posterior and anterior? Okay, for those that felt like they struggled with an anterior tilt, go ahead and take both green wedges and place them behind your heels, inserting underneath you. For those that felt, posterior tilt, I kind of struggled on that. Take the green wedges and put them inside and pointing back underneath both heels. So they're going back to, say, like 4 o'clock on your right foot and 8 o'clock under the heel on the left, like Daniel's got them right here. So if you struggle to posteriorly tilt, put the wedges on the inside and pointing outward. And try to tilt again. Just a show of hands for any change in your mechanics for that. What the fire's that all about, huh? Okay. Side note, if you studied gait mechanics, you would find that your heel bone moved in a synchronous pattern, identical with your pelvis through the entire gait cycle. Both left and right calcaneus, pelvis, and for that matter, skull. In fact, if you'd step off the wedges for a second, check in, again, there's a wall right in front of your head, in front of your nose, and back of your head. What is it like to posteriorly and anteriorly tilt your skull? So we're looking at cervical flexion and extension at the same time, but what is that like? Do you find that you're throwing your head forward and smashing into the glass window in front of you, or thrusting your head back? Or can you keep it on top of your body? And is there one direction that's all gunked up, shall we say, official anatomical terms there? Which direction is gunky? If it is bringing your chin toward your chest, anteriorly tilting your skull, go ahead and put the wedges underneath the back of your heels. If it is bringing your chin and nose up toward the ceiling, go ahead and put those green wedges again on the inside of the heels pointing backwards. And check in once again with your skull tilting, head tilt. Anybody notice a difference with that? Some smiles going on. Wow, you've just accessed movement that was restricted. Could this just be a nice meditative thing that you do? Put the wedges there and feel what it's like to access movement that hasn't been there for a while? What might that do to your nervous system, being able to access something that's restricted? Because I know in movement, everything has to add up to 100% in terms of joint mechanics. When I lose a percentage here, I have to gain it somewhere else in the system. Often it's a neighboring joint, but not always. Well, that's kind of cool. So you just fed up and down the chain by placing a wedge either in the front or in the back. Kind of voodoo, black magic stuff, right? But you figured it out because we have what's called joint coupling relationships. When one joint moves, it has a direct effect with the other. And as bipedal humans that are contralateral in movement, and we've been doing it for thousands of generations, the nervous system has become hardwired into these relationships. And if we know what these relationships are all about, we can actually affect one to create a chain reaction all the way up the body. Cool with that? All right. How about this? We're back to the pelvis. Let's go frontal plane. What is it like to translate or sway your hips off to one side and the other? Can you keep your head more or less in one place and let your hips sway? Some of you struggle with this in both directions. Others, heck, you go to another zip code in one direction and you kind of hit a cardboard wall in the other direction. Anybody feel like that? Yeah, there's a little difference. Cool? Okay. Well, I know that heel and the pelvis are kind of matched with one another. So if I kind of encourage the heel to go in one direction, maybe that will help my pelvis to go in that direction. So let's just say you struggle with translating your pelvis off to your left. You may want to take a wedge and place it either on the outside of your right heel or coming in from the side of your inside left heel. So now we're going frontal plane with the wedge placement. And you can do both for that matter. If you struggle to go right, I would put a wedge maybe under the inside of your right heel or the outside of your left heel, or a combination of those, and check in with your hip action or pelvic motion. Because I know when I translate the hips in one direction, I'm encouraging adduction at one hip and closed chain abduction at the other. Closed chain movement's a lot different than open chain motion. Can we train in a closed chain environment? That's going to send a lot more information up the brain. Did that make any difference? How cool is that? So if you're doing a lateral lunge with a client, not that you want them stepping on, but what if you're doing a laterally shifting squat or some action like that, and they're getting stuck on one side? Maybe they start feeling their knee because the hip isn't moving enough, the knee starts compensating. Oh, I shove a wedge under there, and you are like Mr. Wizard. What the hell was that all about? I don't even feel my knee anymore. Can you get deeper into that? Oh, heck yeah. I don't even feel like that was so weird. What's that all about? You're like, oh, no. Come on back for the next session. I'll do something else with flowers, a rabbit, and a hat. Okay, so the other way we move our pelvis is not just translating, but we can actually tilt it from left to right. So if you were to stand with one leg straight and allow the other knee to just bend and try not to create any torsion or rotation to your body, what is it like to just drop that knee down so that one side of the pelvis drops while the other one hikes up? And then just straighten that leg and then bend into the other knee. Can you keep yourself up on top? Or do you find yourself crashing over when you bend the knee? And might as well add foot pressure here for a second. When you bend one knee, where's the pressure in your feet? Does it stay even? And when you bend the other knee, does the pressure stay even? Or do you find that you can't manage the mass in a vertically stacked position and you find yourself shifting left to right? Good insight, good information. Who struggles to hike the left side or drop the right side? Who struggles to do the opposite? Hiking, okay. If you struggle to hike your right pelvis, meaning bending into your left knee, then go ahead and take a wedge on the outside of your right heel. If you found that you struggled to really load into your glutes on the left side, hiking that hip up there, then put a wedge on the outside of your left heel. Could it be that we can activate the glute and load into it properly in a closed chain just by simply encouraging a little different position underneath the foot? Is there a difference now? Okay? For some of you, if there wasn't a difference, what I want you to do is wherever that wedge is, whichever foot it is, take the black wedge and shove it sideways underneath the first metatarsal head, the ball of the foot by the big toe. And recheck that, see if that makes any difference. What I do in the rear foot, well, maybe I do the opposite in the forefoot because they oppose each other, just like my ribs and pelvis do when I have spinal extension and flexion, oppositional motion between pelvis and ribs. Yes?
Did you actually use the red while you were sliding? Did you tell what
Oh, yes.
Do
We have an extra set? Here, I'll just take these. Okay, perfect. All right, I'll try and stand up here too, although the black's kind of hard to see. Okay, so let's just say I struggled, well, I'll tell you which one I struggled with. Left. I struggled with hiking my left up. That feels very awkward, a lot of compression going on. I'm not really clean with that. So if I want to hike this up, I'm going to put the wedge on the outside of my heel. Boom. And that just allowed me to just drop into this. And now I can actually load into this glute. But if that wasn't enough, maybe I'd take a wedge and put it under. When would I use this? Oh, well, I'm on the box. When I do a step up, that should occur in my pelvis. I should have a drop on one side and a hike on the other, which loads my glute hamstring complex, my VMO. This is pronation, and then this is supination. If I don't go into pronation well, what do you think the quality of my driving up is going to be like? It's going to be compromised too. So if I struggle to get that drop, maybe I put those wedges there. Wow, we should try this. That's why I brought these boxes out. Instantly, one, I have a greater degree of balance and stability because I've just reinforced proper tripod position under my foot, which allows me to really get into this glute. Now, when I tilt the pelvis this way, in order to stay up over this leg, my rib cage has to go in the opposite direction. So frontal plane opposition, I couldn't even lift this arm up to encourage the rib cage to load into that leg. Shall we bring away and try this for right now? We can put 4 people on a box. I can bring out some other boxes. Bring your wedges over. And what I want you to do, and we've got more boxes here. We'll bring one over here for you guys. Do you love your Costco socks? I totally love my Costco socks. Yes. All right. So we'll bring you forward a little bit more. So your foot's up here. Good. We'll put one there and one there. And just as you do this, and we've got other ones. If you want to be right here, you can be right there. Find a spot there. Try it without the wedge, and then try it with the wedge. Try it with more than one wedge if you like. But what we're trying to do, remember, is we're trying to maintain 3 points of contact under your foot. I don't expect everyone to feel the same thing because we're all here very individual. How many of you feel like you have a greater degree of stability, a greater degree of balance? What if the problem wasn't balance so much as you didn't make proper contact underneath your foot? How many of you feel your glutes engaging more? Cool, huh? But they're engaging in a functional way. How cool is that? Could it be that the client that you have who complains of knee issues when doing step-ups just has the improper contact points underneath their feet? Does anybody listen to podcasts here? Anybody know Joel Smith with Just Fly podcast? He's pretty well known in the podcast world. He trains a lot of high jumpers. And I would put this point here. He came by my facility, we did a little podcast together, and he had the same problem. When he did step-ups, there was some knee pain. And I'm like, well, I can see that your heel isn't rolling the way it should, so I put a wedge under there. And I can see that he wasn't putting contact in the front of his foot where he should. So I just put a little wedge there. Instantly, he's like, it's gone. That knee pain that I was having, yeah, because we gave him better contact points and encouraged proper motion of the foot, which stimulated a whole chain reaction. How's that feel? So far, so good? All right. Now, nice. Now, if you want to do that, again, just try that some more. But this time, I might just encourage you to take your left arm up as you go down. Yep. And go down. Oh, yeah. And so, from a muscle perspective, we get some lengthening over this side. When you were standing on those two scales, which side was it the bigger number? Left or right? Left. So, if I've got more weight on my left, there may be a chance that I'm compressing over on the left, bringing my body over there. What's he doing now? He's creating space over there, and he's actually teaching his body that it's safe to lower to the right. Do you have any history on your right leg, by the way? Like ankle sprain, hip, knee? Stiffer, a bit weaker. Through the ankle. Oh, cool. All right. That feels nice. Cool. Is everybody good with that? Okay. Tell you what, the squats. Do you have a question or are you just going with me? Okay. Squats. We'll talk about the elephant in the room, right? Beautiful. Daniel's already in it. So, check in with your squats without wedges. Just get a sense. And I don't care how you stand, which way your toes are pointed, or anything else. Whatever is your natural inclination to perform a squat. And I want you to feel what your body's going through when you do it. How are the ankles? How are the knees? Where is the weight? How's your lower back feeling? Do your hips feel like they're going in a certain place? Are they swaying to the right, to the left? Do you feel like your head is breaking the window that's in front of the knees? Do you have to lean forward? Do you stay upright? Just get a sense of that. Okay, cool with that? Now, go ahead, for the sake of it, put the wedges underneath your heels. And you don't have to stand on the whole thing, just a little bit. And what are we doing to the heel itself? It's rolling down the hill. So we're encouraging the heel to anteriorly tilt or plantar flex, however you want to say it. And we know that it has a neurological connection with the pelvis. So whatever you do to the heel, the pelvis is going to want to do the same. And we have an anterior tilt to the pelvis when we squat. So see what that's like when you squat with them under your heels. Does that allow you greater range of motion, greater sense of balance, greater sense of stability? Great. Now, I also know that we're landing on planet Earth. Those other points of contact should be maintained as well. So go ahead and take the wedges out of your heels and just see what it's like to put them underneath the balls of the feet on your first met head. And not coming forward, but maybe from the side, inward. Like, what's your name? Like Paul's got him here. He's coming in from the left and the right under the first met head. Just check in with what that's like. Now, some of you are going to be like, that's even better. Others are going to be like, no, I'll put it back to the heels. Oh, no. Okay, all right. We got another option, though, don't we? How about put them on the fifth met head? Take them to the outside of your 4 feet. See what that's like. There's one place that really is good for you. And you know it. And the cool thing is, you knew instantly. So use that as your guide. If you're using wedges, it's never necessarily going to be identical from one person to the next. Because your legs, what's your name? Chris? Chris, not only does he have 2 different legs, but he's lived a unique life. We haven't lived the same identical life, so his brain has had to interpret everything that he's gone through in his world and had to coordinate the most efficient means by getting through there. Completely different than how I did, so where I'm going to place wedges for him is different.
So is there any kind of, so you know, their knees.
The valgus stuff?
Squat. Would that be a good time to try it inside of their first minute?
You may very well, and the reason being is when the knees go valgus and faster than you would want them, then the feet are going to roll inward and make contact faster. And therefore, usually the whole foot is going to roll in. So if I shove something underneath that first met head, It's going to hit sooner, but it's also going to create opposition, which is a part of the pronation mechanics. So it may be something to try out. I don't do a lot of bilateral action. We will do, let's try deadlifts. We'll get the bilateral stuff out of there. Then we'll play with the vector system over there a little bit. We'll play with some different actions, and then we'll kind of, we'll see where we are with time and all that. So what I'd like you to do is go ahead and just assume that you have a kettlebell or barbell or whatever in your hand and perform without any wedges your deadlift action. And what I want you to do, whether it's a stiff leg or bent knee, RDL, whatever name you want to call these deadlifts, can you keep your spine in a place that's neither flexing nor extending, but is staying without much movement, so that the hinging is coming at the hip joint, the pelvis is anteriorly tilting. Cool with that? All right. You can put those wedges under your heels again if you like. That will encourage sagittal plane motion up the chain. What's that like on your deadlift now? Does that allow you to access more hamstring involvement, more glute involvement? What the fire is that all about then? So now that I got that involvement, I kick in those muscles a little bit more. My goal as a trainer is to just slide them out, just week after week. We're just going to keep sliding them out, but your movements are going to stay the same. You just won't need as much. And that's the beautiful thing about an inclined plane, is I can shove it under more to regress or pull it away to progress. Cool.
So you can fix yourself by using these, is what you're saying.
You can fix yourself. That is exactly what I'm saying. I'm not going to fix you, but I can guide you down the path where you can start to explore movements that you have not had in your library for quite some time. And that's the other thing, is your previous injuries have created a pattern. And that pattern doesn't have a magic reset button just because you went through some type of rehab program. You haven't trained your body how to really get... How many people have parts of their body that they don't feel completely confident on? Like when you jump down from a box, are you going to favor jumping down on one leg and the other one's like, it's not happening today, I'm not doing that. And yet we accept that. That's our normal way of being. Are you okay accepting that? I guess you are right now, but after this, I'm hoping you're not. Why is that? Well, I rolled my ankle stepping through that gopher's hole, or I slammed into the mountain on that border cross I shouldn't have been on, and my hip got slammed in, or something happened, and I created this pattern to get around it. And how many clients just, okay, we won't do that exercise. What if we just kind of looked at it and said, okay, well, let's just slowly get into it, and let's make sure that you have a good foundation underneath you, understand where the joints should be moving, and see if we can't guide it in and out of there. And then the nervous system lights up and goes, whoa, this is like Christmas Day. I didn't know there was a present under the tree. I found an extra one, and now I love it. I'm going to do that more often. Okay, let's do one more thing with the pelvis, because that's going to be kind of cool. And then we'll do a little something with the head, a little something with the shoulders. So in terms of mobility and accessing movement, and then if you can figure out how do I put this into a program, that's awesome. If you need some guidance, totally give you some advice or suggestions, okay? So let's just check in. You're like a duck on the water. Your upper body stays still. But what is it like to rotate your pelvis left and right? If your belly button had a flashlight, you're like a lighthouse going left to right. When you do that, is there a difference going left and right? But also, how do you do it? Meaning, do you pull back to create rotation in that direction? Or you take the other hip and you drive forward to go in that direction? And when you go to the other side, are you drawing back with one hip? Are you driving forward with one hip? You've had these bodies all your life, right? So how do you do this? How do you rotate? Show of hands for the people that only drive forward with rotation. Cool? Cool? Show of hands for how many people only drive backwards. Awesome? Show of hands for the people that you realize are only using one hip to do both directions. Sweet, isn't it? It's like, what's that? Shut the front door. I can't believe that. going on with you over here? Okay, so for those of you that struggled going to your left with your pelvis, so far we've gone sagittal plane with the wedge, forward or backwards to create sagittal action. And so far we've come in from either the left side or the right side to encourage frontal plane motion. How do we do rotation? Well, if I've got force going forward as well as going sideways, it's actually going to meet in the middle and cause a diagonal force vector. And that's what's going to give me rotation. So let's just say I struggle rotating left. I could take a little wedge from a diagonal action coming in at maybe 4 or 5 o'clock behind my right heel, and I could check in with that. I can also take a wedge on the inside of my left heel coming back at a diagonal pointing towards 7 o'clock, and check in with your rotation there. Do you think that's significant if you have a distinct difference between rotating left and right? Golfers, could you see how by accessing, cleaning up movement, giving the body some proprioceptive feedback, how to unlock this motion, might very well create more power on your kinematic sequence. Check that out. That's a big word from a muscle guy named Walker. That's amazing. I've just been lifting weights for 30 years, count to 10. This is not rocket science. Somebody said, no, it's rocket science. That's funny, I like that. But it's not rocket science. It's just understanding how we get the body to move. So if you were to just practice that action and then step away from the wedges and do it again, did that give you a little bit more access? If I am restricted in my ability to internally, externally rotate my hip joint or rotate my pelvis either right or left, could you see how that might affect the torque on my knees? How that might affect my ability to really move through my spine? Cool with that? How are we doing time-wise? We started at the bottom of the hour, so 5 till. I've got till 1:30. We got 35 minutes. 2:30. We got 2:30. So we got about half an hour. Questions so far? We're good? Okay. How about shoulders? We haven't looked at shoulders. Anybody have some sticky shoulders? Great. Yeah. Everyone that raised their hand does this with the sticky shoulders. All right. For you sticky shoulder folks, let's just check your range of motion. Let's just do a kind of active range. I want you to keep your elbow straight, thumb pointing forward, palm by your side. And I just want you to see what is it like to try and bring the inside of your bicep toward your ear without pulling your head over, because that's cheating. That's just closing the gap. Your brain is saying, oh yeah, I can do that. There's nothing wrong with my shoulder. My neck's killing me. I don't know what that's all about. All right. Yeah. Do you find that your elbow starts to bend when you get to a certain range of motion and it's floating over there to away from you? Do you find that you're lifting your rib cage or your shoulder? There's a whole bunch of ways to cheat. I found them all. They're pretty cool. Okay. Which shoulder gives you a little trouble? Whichever it is, we won't even use the wedges yet. Just take a step forward with the opposite leg. So if you have a little bit more gunk in the trunk on the left shoulder, take the right leg and step forward and bend into that knee and put some weight on it. If it was the right shoulder, go ahead and step forward the left leg, bend into that knee and put some weight on it. Reassess your shoulder's range of motion now. Is there an improvement? And the reason why is because this is gait mechanics. For thousands of generations, when that leg swung forward, the brain said, I need the other arm to swing forward too. We move in opposition. So I already know what position I want this client in who has a sticky shoulder. And I might start doing some lightweight overhead or some pull downs, anything to open that up. That'd be pretty cool. Okay, but where does the wedges come into play? We could take that foot that's forward and we could just incorporate better pronation mechanics. So we could put a wedge sideways underneath the ball of the foot, and you might want to put another one behind, the green one behind that heel from any direction you want, from straight behind to from the side or even a diagonal. And then in that split stance, loading into it, feeling the pressure of those wedges, recheck your shoulder. Any better? So maybe this is your preferred stance when we're working out in an upright position, doing your curls or your push downs or your presses or your pulls. Could be good. It's getting the shoulder to function better. How about this? What about abduction and adduction? If we were to have your palms face forward, elbows straight, what is it like to take the arm up and overhead? Check in with the other side. Do you feel that your head's being drawn over to one side? That's probably the side that's more restricted. Do you feel like you're leaning over to lift that arm up, or the shoulders elevating? Whatever that's happening, that's probably the shoulder. All right, that's a frontal plane action. We could play around with the front of your foot, put a wedge that will encourage that same motion and direction. So if it's my right shoulder that I'm struggling with abduction, I might put a wedge underneath the outside of my right foot at the first mat head, or I can put one under the first mat head of my left foot. So either fifth on the right, first on the left, or a combination of both. Switch them around. For those that are golfers, we went back into that rotation. If you have somebody who wants to clean up their swing mechanics, can you put wedges underneath their feet to encourage that motion? Yeah, totally. How was that with abduction, by the way? Some of you get that cleaned up a little bit different? Interesting. Cool. So, I don't know, maybe I could do some type of overhead press. Maybe I could work on a little bit of a lateral raise with those wedges under there. Maybe I could work on a little lateral lunge, take my arm up and over. Maybe I hold on to a viper. Maybe I get a band. There's a whole bunch of things I can start to add to it once the movement's cleaned up.
So when you were just showing the overhead press, you're not supposed to be moving your body at the same time, are you? I mean, you could just do it like that.
You could just do it like that.
To create more movement in your body at the same time.
I more often than not, want to do integrated force production. I want to get away from isolating unless I need to get into that area and really get that system online before integrating back into the whole. Does that make sense? So for an overhead press, I might, if we're doing like a bilateral shoulder press, I'm more of a push press kind of. I want those legs to feel what it's like to drive off the ground to produce force up here. Otherwise, it's all up here, and it's just, one, it's not how we normally move, and it's more isolated in nature, and from a proprioceptive standpoint, it's not teaching my body how to transfer force in an efficient manner. And so when I see somebody doing these movements, such as a step up, then I might come over to a client as I'm walking along, observing. We'll have 4 people working out at the same time. Usually there's one trainer that's overseeing all 4 people, but I will kind of come out and assist, and I'll just kind of take that wedge. I see that their foot is lifting off. May I use you as an example, please? Would you mind just rolling up your hand legs and just perform a step up with one foot, and we'll just watch how you do it. And you just keep your foot on the step going up and down. And just pay attention to how her foot is. Where is she losing contact? Can you see it from there? 5th mat head? Yeah, on the outside. She can even feel it, she can see it. So the first, go ahead and keep your foot there. Good. So I might just put the napkin under the table leg and see what that's like. Oh, better balance too. Now the tripod has been created. And do you think she can activate the proper prime drivers? Feels better too? Feels better too.
So Rocky, when you do step ups like that, would you just have them keep that foot on the wedge versus stepping down and then re-stepping onto the wedge?
Yeah, my own personal preference is to keep the foot on here because in essence it's a single leg squat. That's what a step up is to me. It's great that they can go up and down if they want to do that, but at the same time, I'm really looking to just load into that tissue. Can I fatigue it? Can I turn it on? And fatigue it to a degree where now it's like, whoo, yeah, I felt that, but the next thing you know, they're kind of hopping around the room. That's always a good sign. When they want to leave the facility and go do something, that for me is like, I hit the magic spot there. I don't want them going out and laying down on the couch or puking in a bush, or the high intensity stuff is not my kind of cup of tea in that regard. I want the body, Gary Gray said it the best, I want the bodies to sing and not scream. So I want people to be coming here to do conditioning so they're conditioned to go do what it is they want to do. I'm just not here to put them into some heaving, sweating pulp or mass and just say, oh, that was the best workout. Like, that was the worst workout. So, single leg deadlift, shall we do that? Well, let's use the vectors. These things, I don't know if you've been in any of the hands-on with these babies. We've got two of them in my facility. We've got the smaller one, which is like the travel version, the longer one, which is the gym version. But I love the Kevlar sleeves inside the band, so I know they're not going to come flying off. And I can dial it up in resistance up to like 100 pounds or down around 5 to 10. So what I have to do is let's turn on the glute. So in order to turn on the glute, I'm actually going to load it in the lengthened position. And in order to know what I have to do there, I have to understand the glute's role in life. And what we've been taught is that the glute, when the muscle contracts, aka shortens, it extends the hip, it abducts the hip, and externally rotates the hip in all three planes of motion. So this is the most shortened position I can get in my glute. But what if it's the foot's on the ground? How am I gonna load into that? And human movement is based on lengthening before shortening. Does that make sense to you? In order for me to jump off the ground, I need to lengthen my muscles before they shorten. If I were to throw a baseball, I need to lengthen the muscles before shortening. A golf swing, lengthen before shortening. And for that matter, just stepping, lengthening before shortening. In our world of strength conditioning, slam on ourselves here, we've gone from the neutral aspect of the muscle to the end of the spectrum, the concentric realm, and we eccentrically get back to neutral before we concentrically contract. Most of the movements do not enter into the eccentric spectrum, where proprioceptors fire up, where forces produce greater, where muscles decelerate joint action. And so we come up with hamstring pulls, adductor strains, ACL tears. There's my soapbox for a moment. I didn't even stand it. Okay, if I want to turn on my glute, I've got to do the opposite of what concentrically occurred. So instead of extending the hip, I've got to flex the hip. Instead of abducting, I've got to adduct. So I'm going to let that knee go valgus over the big toe. That's right, I'm going to let my knee go valgus, because that's when my VMO is now turned on and it's slowing my knee rotation and flexion down, preventing my ACL to take the strain. And what's missing? Oh, with my arm forward, I'm internally rotating here instead of externally rotating. So, here's your movement. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 right here. Bring your wedges along for the ride. Do it without the wedges first. And I want you to get a sense of what the quality, and for those that don't have the bands, you're free to use just your own body and try and do a single leg deadlift. Now, where your stance foot is, check in with the tripod. Do you feel how you're rolling to the outside of your foot? You're having a hard time keeping the ball of your foot by your big toe on the ground. In fact, your big toe is crushing the carpet right now, which is pushing your first met off the ground. So your tripod is the tip of your big toe, the outside of the fifth met in your heel. Do you feel that? So you're not actually pushing in to the first met. And therefore, you're going to have a hard time really loading into your VMO and your glute. So we're going to put this under the first met. And now try it. Crush that wedge. Crush it. Crush it. And let me know, what does that feel like in terms of where your hand is touching right now? Better. You could try underneath the heel to help you load into it. Cool with that? And if you want to do a one-arm row with this at the same time or keep the arms straight, it's up to you. So for those of you that are doing it without the band, and you do the single leg deadlift, check in with your tripod. Where's the pressure on your foot? Are you losing it under the ball of the foot by the big toe? And is it Becky? Yeah, in Becky's case, what I noticed was in order for her to create a tripod, she was actually crushing the tip of her big toe into the carpet to give her something to claw into the ground. But what that did inadvertently was it lifted her first med head, which forced her toward the outside of her foot, not giving her a lot of stability. And therefore, how can she really do a proper loading pattern? Yeah. Please. Whoa, okay, hold on. You just, your bad ankle, it ran off with the farmer's wife to Indonesia or something like that on a surf trip, left you behind? No, that's your warrior ankle. That's your amazing ankle that has been with you. Okay, I'm cool with that. Okay, that's your struggle. Yeah, could it be that the intensity of the movement is too high and we need to break it down a little bit? So instead of using the band this time, we've just got to do a little regression. And I'm just going to have you put your fingers here and do the same thing with your hands sliding back and forth. And let's just see if the foot can handle that. Take your time, slow it down. There you go. Cool. And I'm just going to watch your foot. Okay, cool. Where did all these wedges go to? There we go, we got one there. Okay, go ahead and place your foot there. So in case you missed the question, everywhere she's placed it, it's been funky. And what this shows me is we may want to work on ankle mobility. Do you have an ankle issue? What happened? Severe sprain a quarter of a century ago, and it's still with you. It is. How wonderful. And you call it bad? That thing has been with you after all that stuff. It's been living with trauma all this time, and you're bullying it. Gosh, that's so mean. Okay, so let's quickly do something that is non-related to the wedges for a second. We're going to have you have a seat here, and let's just see if we can't get the ankle moving. So I'm not a licensed physical therapist. I'm not a chiropractor. I do play one on TV. But what I want to do is, how's that feel? Is that all right? Is that nice? Yeah, I'll do more. There's a guy playing with my feet. Whatever you want. So I just want to see how her chalice is moving, how her heel moves in the sagittal plane, frontal, transverse. We'll see your pedicure. Not bad. All right. That was my elbow, not your foot. That's good. And so what I'm doing is just getting the joints to, ooh, there we go. Get the joints to, we got a few bones to kind of just feel what it's like to move. All I'm doing, if anybody asks me that walks in, I'm just helping her facilitate stretching. I swear. Yeah, I'm not a trained massage therapist. I'm just assessing how these bones are moving. Okay, and I'm just curious to see what that's like after that. So what I noticed is that we didn't get the movement we wanted with the use of the wedges, so we might have to isolate. We might have to actually work on that region, and then let's integrate it back in. We pulled them out of the party, yeah, without the wedge for right now, just see what it's like. And all I'm wondering is, does it feel different? Something's popping and cracking.
Yeah, I feel like I have more movement.
Okay, so now you have more movement. We got to own it. More stable. Well, these are horrible things to get that bad ankle, isn't it? That little pinch. Okay, so we're going to put that right over there. And let's try that again. Just to give it a little bit something. And you let me know if that helps or doesn't. Yeah, okay, cool. Okay, so let's put it back like that, just a little bit. And let's just see if that helps. Encourage the ankle to roll and move. Oh, that's a little bit better, it seems. That feels a little bit better. Cool. So we just changed it up a little bit. Cool. Okay. How's everything so far? Is it 25 past?
It's 2:41 right now.
2:41. So we go to top of the hour? Or no, to quarter of. 4 minutes, you're right.
You can knock it out a little bit longer.
Oh, that's always good. Okay. Questions so far? Everybody good with this? Cool. I would, if nothing else, when you go home, take your socks off and fold them a few times and shove them under those 3 points of contact, right? I'm not here to turn this into an infomercial by any stretch. The wedges are here, but you don't necessarily, they're just tools. So if you want to fold up your sock and put it under your foot and just see what it's like to do your movements, or better yet, if you have your shoes on when you're working out, just put like a 2.5 weight plate underneath one area. Just give it some change. So with the vector here, what I want to do is a pressing action. And just have a few of you try this out for a moment. So you'll have your opposite leg forward, back leg extended. And I just need 6 volunteers. So whichever foot you want forward. So with this, the force isn't going to be directed into the forward leg. It's going to be into the back leg. So we're looking at supination. We're looking at blasting off the back leg. Do you agree with this? In order for, what's your name? In order for Jenna to drive her right arm forward, she's actually got to drive through her right leg. What I'm going to do, Jenna, is ask you to maybe just let that right heel come off the ground a little bit. Good. And I'm going to take one of these wedges and put it just underneath your 5th net. So just lift up a little bit here. There you go. Keep this heel off the ground, keep the knee straight. Okay, and then from that position, go ahead and drive. Good. And just keep working that. So what I'm encouraging is, can you feel how that extends your knee more? Can you feel how that gives you more hip extension? How wild is that? If I've got a greater degree of hip extension, what do you think the elastic property of my hip flexors are going to be like if we're talking sprinting? We're always talking about knee drive with sprinting, but what about hip extension to give you more elastic potential for that knee drive? How many people do you know are gunked up in the hip flexors? Maybe rec fem, iliacus. We got 7 hip flexors, right? Adductor longus, adductor magnus. I think sartorius is one of them. Rec fem, psoas major, psoas minor, iliacus. There's a whole bunch of muscles that are keeping us from fully extending if they are so accustomed to being in a shortened state. Oh, this is your special side, huh? Excellent. Short bust, long bust. Interesting. So, on PC. Does this make sense? So we can put a wedge underneath the foot for better extension, and I can start working presses and really getting that contact down. I can also load into this one. Do rows, do step-ups, do glider exercises. Does anybody do the gliders back and forth or laterally? What if you were to start to just play around with the wedges underneath your foot? Your clients are going to be, one, if you do it right, they're going to be like, oh, that feels so good. And if you do it in a different position, instantly they're going to be like, no, that doesn't feel good at all. They're going to guide you back and forth, and before you know it, you're going to start to develop patterns. You'll see them emerge. Cool with that? Awesome. Did we, I think we covered just about everything I wanted to. Normally, there isn't a slideshow that goes on with the hands on, but I felt like this was required. So I put together a slideshow that you guys have been emailed, and will shortly get emailed to you if you haven't received them already. And this presentation has a whole bunch of slides to give you a better sense of foot mechanics. I'll also say this, if you go to my website, shameless self-promotion time, if you go to my website, which is my name, rockysnyder.com, there's a complimentary 15-minute wedge course. And I've got a bigger one, which is like 3 hours or so online, where it's exploring foot wedges. And actually, if you're with the NSCA, you get credits, you get CEUs for it too. I've just been approved for chiropractic CEUs in California, and the American Physical Therapy Association is really interested in this stuff, so they approved me there, and also the Board of Certification for Athletic Trainers. So it's my hope, because this is kind of new information, even though it's somewhat old, to start to spread the word a little bit. But I don't want to be known as the wedge guy, so please don't call me the wedge guy. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for coming.